stood at the window of the government building, watching the stars above Earth's capital city. He was only 32 years old, but tonight he felt much older. In his hand, he held a small device that would change his life forever. It was a contract, a marriage contract. The Empire had arrived 6 months ago. Their ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning, massive and beautiful like floating cities made of silver light. Humanity panicked at first. Every defense system went on alert. Every military base prepared for war. But they came in peace, or so they said. They were tall beings, almost human-like but with skin that shimmered like pearls. Their eyes were larger, colored in shades of violet and gold. They spoke perfect English, having studied Earth's broadcasts for decades before making contact. They offered friendship, technology, and protection from other alien species that were not so friendly. But friendship came with a price. "You look troubled," said a voice behind him. Turned to see his best friend entering the room. Worked as the head of Earth's intelligence division, and he always looked suspicious of everything. Tonight was no different. "They want me to marry one of them," said quietly. "A princess. Her name is—" His face darkened. "I know, I read the proposal. This is insane. We know nothing about these aliens. They arrive, offer us technology, and suddenly they want one of our best diplomats to marry into their royal family. It's too convenient." "What choice do we have?" asked, his voice tired. "We just got into space. We just built our first ships that can travel beyond our solar system, and they've been traveling between stars for thousands of years. If we refuse, we lose everything. If other hostile aliens come, we're defenseless." "If we accept, we might lose more than technology," said. "We might lose our freedom." Before could respond, the door opened again. Prime Minister entered, followed by two diplomats. Was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had led Earth through first contact, and the stress showed on his face. Said formally, "They are here. Are you ready to meet Princess?" Straightened his suit and nodded. "Yes, Prime Minister." The diplomat stepped aside and she entered the room. Princess was breathtaking. She wore flowing robes that seemed to shift colors as she moved, from deep blue to soft purple. Her skin had that same pearl-like shimmer, and her golden eyes fixed on with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. She appeared young, perhaps in her late 20s by human standards, though Nu lived much longer than humans. "Diplomat," she said, her voice melodic. "I am honored to meet the man who will be my husband." Bowed slightly, as he had been taught in the cultural briefings. "The honor is mine, Princess." They sat across from each other at a long table, and the diplomats discussed the terms of the alliance while and simply looked at each other. She smiled, but it was a careful smile, professional. He wondered what she really thought about this arrangement. Was she as uncomfortable as he was? "Tell me about Earth," said suddenly, interrupting the formal discussions. "I have studied your planet from our records, but I want to hear from you. What do you love most about your world?" Was surprised by the question. He thought for a moment. "The diversity," he finally said. "We have so many different people, cultures, languages, ideas. We argue constantly, but somehow we're learning to work together. It's chaotic, but it's beautiful." His expression changed slightly. Was that interest in her eyes or something else? "Chaotic," she repeated. "Yes, we have noticed this about humans. You are very unpredictable. It is fascinating." The word hung in the air. Fascinating. The way she said it made uneasy, but he couldn't explain why. The negotiations continued for 3 more hours. Finally, the terms were set. The marriage would happen in 2 weeks. It would be a grand ceremony combining human and traditions. The event would be broadcast across both worlds. In exchange, Earth would receive technology, protection, and a seat in their interstellar council. As the meeting ended, approached privately. "I know this is difficult for you," she said softly. "It is difficult for me too, but perhaps we can make the best of this situation. Perhaps we can be friends." "I would like that," said, and he meant it. Despite his suspicions, despite everything, there was something genuine in her voice that made him want to trust her. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur, barely slept. He attended endless meetings, cultural training sessions, and security briefings. Continued to warn him, showing reports of strange activities around Earth's military bases. But everyone else seemed excited about the alliance. The public loved. She gave interviews, visited schools, and charmed everyone she met. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Thousands gathered in the capital city. Millions more watched on screens around the world. The ceremony took place in a specially built pavilion that mixed human and architectural styles. Wore a traditional human suit with ceremonial sashes. Wore a dress that seemed made of starlight itself. They spoke their vows in both languages. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. Fireworks exploded overhead in patterns that spelled out words of peace in a dozen human languages. Ships in orbit created light displays that painted the sky with colors Earth had never seen before. That night at the reception, watched carefully. She danced with human guests, laughed at their jokes, and seemed genuinely happy. But he noticed something strange. Whenever she thought no one was watching, her eyes would scan the room with an intensity that didn't match her smile. She paid particular attention to the military officers present, asking them subtle questions about their work. "You see it too, don't you?" whispered, appearing at side with a drink. "See what?" asked, though he knew exactly what his friend meant. "She's working. This isn't a celebration for her, it's an opportunity." His voice was grim. "Be careful, my friend. I think your wife has an agenda that has nothing to do with love or peace." Wanted to disagree. He wanted to believe that was exactly what she appeared to be, but deep down he felt it too. Something was wrong. Something was hidden beneath the surface of this beautiful alliance. He just didn't know yet how right his instincts were, or how much danger Earth was truly in. The celebration continued into the early morning, and through it all, Princess smiled and charmed and watched, always watched. 6 months passed since the wedding, and lived together in a secure apartment in the capital, surrounded by guards and diplomats and constant attention. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, the bridge between two civilizations, but knew the truth was more complicated. Was kind to him. She learned to cook human food, though it often tasted strange. She laughed at his jokes and listened to his stories about growing up on Earth. Sometimes, late at night, they would sit on the balcony and she would tell him about her home world, about cities that floated in the clouds and oceans that glowed with natural light. In those quiet moments, almost forgot that their marriage was a political arrangement. Almost. As part of the alliance, traveled with to various human facilities. They visited research centers, military bases, and the colonies humanity had just started building on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Everywhere they went, asked questions. So many questions. "Why do you place your defense satellites in this pattern?" she would ask engineers. "What materials do you use for your ship hulls?" she would inquire of manufacturers. "How do your commanders make decisions during combat?" she would question military officers. The humans were happy to answer. After all, she was the princess, their ally's wife. What harm could come from sharing information with a friend? But saw the pattern. He had placed surveillance on from the beginning, though he kept it secret from most people. His team tracked every conversation, every movement, every data access, and what they found made him sick with worry. Was downloading files, restricted files, military specifications, defense plans, weapon blueprints, and strategic resources locations. She used sophisticated technology hidden in her jewelry to scan and copy everything she saw. Then she transmitted it somewhere, to coordinates that team couldn't trace. "You have to see this," told one day, bringing him to a secure intelligence facility. They sat in a dark room watching footage of in various locations, her bracelet glowing faintly as it scanned nearby computer systems. Watched the screens, his heart sinking. "There must be an explanation," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What explanation could there be?" demanded. "She's stealing our secrets. She's been doing it since day one. The marriage, the friendship, all of it was a cover for espionage." "I'll talk to her," said quietly. "No," said firmly. "Not yet. If she knows we're watching, she'll change her methods. We need to find out where she's sending this information and why." Wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Deep down, he had suspected something was wrong. He had just hoped he was paranoid. That evening came home to find cooking dinner. She smiled when she saw him, and for a moment he saw genuine warmth in her expression. Or was he imagining it? Was everything about her a lie? "How was your day?" she asked, stirring something that smelled like a mixture of human and spices. "Fine," he lied. "Busy. How about yours?" "I spent time with your sister today," said. Younger sister Sarah was a quantum physicist working on Earth's first real faster-than-light drive. She's brilliant. She explained some of her theories about dimensional folding. Humans have such creative approaches to problems. "Creative?" asked, sitting down. "What do you mean?" Brought plates to the table and sat across from him. "Solve problems through logic and mathematics. We calculate every possibility and choose the most efficient solution. But humans, you try things that shouldn't work. You take risks. You imagine possibilities that our computers would never calculate because they seem impossible. It's remarkable." "Is that why your people want to ally with us?" asked carefully. "Because we're creative." Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, guilt. It passed too quickly for him to be sure. "We want to ally with you because you have potential," she said. "Great potential." That night couldn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to breathe beside him, wondering who she really was. The woman who told him stories about her childhood, the spy stealing Earth secrets. Could she be both? The next morning, everything changed. A diplomatic ship arrived without warning. It was unusual because all visits were supposed to be scheduled weeks in advance. Was in a meeting when he heard the news. He immediately went home and found on their balcony, staring up at the sky where the silver ship hung like a second moon. She looked disturbed. Her hands gripped the railing tightly, and her pearl-like skin had paled to an almost white shade. "What's wrong?" asked. "They shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Not yet, it's too soon." "Too soon for what?" Before she could answer, his communicator beeped urgently. It was, "Get to headquarters immediately. We have a situation." At headquarters, chaos had broken out. The room was filled with military commanders, intelligence officers, and government officials. On the main screen, a map showed something that made his blood freeze. At the edge of Earth's solar system, sensors had detected ships. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. A massive fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel. "They're not responding to our communications," Commander Minu said. He led Earth's experimental defense fleet, which suddenly seemed very small and very inadequate. "They're just sitting there at the edge of detection range." "How long have they been there?" asked. "We don't know," Minu admitted. "They appeared on our sensors an hour ago, but they could have been hiding for days. Their stealth technology is better than ours." Head of counterintelligence stood up. She was a stern woman who rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. "We need to arrest Princess immediately. We have conclusive evidence that she's been conducting espionage operations since she arrived on Earth. We believe she's been preparing Earth's defenses for this fleet." All eyes turned to. He felt like he was drowning. His wife, his friend, a spy, and now a fleet of warships at their doorstep. "Where is she now?" Prime Minister asked. "Under surveillance at their apartment," replied. "We've been monitoring her, waiting to understand the full scope of her mission. I believe we have our answer now." "Bring her in," ordered. "I'm sorry, but you know this is necessary." Nodded numbly. He did know, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. Within an hour was in custody. She didn't resist. She didn't even seem surprised. As security officers led her to an interrogation room, she looked at one last time. Her golden eyes were filled with something he couldn't read: regret, relief, sadness. "I'm sorry," she mouthed silently before the doors closed behind her. Stood alone in the corridor, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The woman he had started to care for was a spy, and hundreds of alien warships waited at the edge of Earth's solar system, ready for something terrible. He had been a fool to trust her, to trust any of them. Now humanity would pay the price for his mistake. The interrogation room was cold and sterile. Sat at a metal table, her hands bound with restraints designed specifically for physiology. Across from her sat, with and several other intelligence officers standing against the walls. Watched through a one-way mirror, his hands clenched into fists. "Why are you here?" asked directly. "What is the purpose of the fleet?" Stared at the table for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. "I am here because I was ordered to be. The fleet is here because that was always the plan." "What plan?" demanded, stepping forward. "Speak clearly." Looked up and her golden eyes seemed tired. "The Empire never intended an alliance with Earth. We came to conquer you. But our laws, our traditions, they forbid us from invading another civilization without proper understanding. We must study our enemies first, learn their strengths and weaknesses, map their defenses. That was my purpose. I was the reconnaissance mission." The room fell silent, felt like someone had punched him in the chest. Everything had been a lie. "The marriage," said coldly, "it was always about getting access." "Yes," admitted. "As the wife of a high-ranking diplomat, I could travel freely, visit your military bases, ask questions without suspicion. Technology allowed me to scan and copy your systems, to transmit information back to our military command. I mapped every defense satellite, every weapon system, every strategic resource in your solar system. I even identified the psychological weaknesses in your command structure." "How long?" His voice came through a speaker. He couldn't stay silent anymore. "How long have you been planning this?" His eyes found the mirror, as if she could see through it to where he stood. "Before we ever made contact, we observed Earth for decades. When you achieved faster-than-light travel, you became both interesting and dangerous. The Empire decided you must be controlled before you become a threat." Slammed his hand on the table. "Why are you telling us this now? What game are you playing?" "No game," said softly. "The invasion will happen in 72 hours regardless of what I say. Commander, my former military mentor, leads the fleet. He is following the plan I helped create. Nothing I do now can stop what's coming." Stood up. "Then you're admitting to an act of war. You understand that Earth's laws would consider you a war criminal." "Yes," said simply, "I understand." Couldn't take it anymore. He entered the interrogation room, ignoring protests from the other officers. He stood across from, looking down at the woman he had shared meals with, laughed with, started to care for. "Was any of it real?" he asked. "The conversations, the stories. Did you feel anything at all, or was I just another target?" His composure finally cracked. Tears formed in her golden eyes, something had never seen before. Crying looked different from humans. Their tears shimmered with iridescent colors. "That's the problem," she whispered. "I wasn't supposed to feel anything. I was trained to see you as inferior, as resources to be acquired. But humans, you're so different from what we expected. You're chaotic and emotional and illogical, but you're also kind and creative and brave. And you treated me like a person, not like a princess or a political tool. You asked about my dreams. You listened to my fears. You made me laugh." "Stop," said, his voice breaking. "Don't do that. Don't try to make me sympathize with you after what you've done." "I'm not asking for sympathy," said. "I'm trying to explain why I'm about to commit the greatest treason in history." Everyone in the room froze, leaned forward. "Explain." Took a deep breath. "There's something the Empire fears about humanity. Something they didn't want me to tell you because knowing it might help you survive. Are superior to humans in almost every way. We're stronger, we live longer, our technology is more advanced. But there's one thing we cannot do that humans do naturally. We cannot innovate like you. We cannot create truly new ideas. That's ridiculous, said. You have faster-than-light travel, energy shields, weapons that can destroy planets. All derived from ancient technology we found on dead worlds, explained. We improve existing systems. We make them more efficient. But true innovation, true creativity, the ability to imagine something completely new and make it real, that's uniquely human. Our computers can calculate 1 trillion possibilities, but they can only calculate based on what already exists. You imagine impossibilities and then find ways to make them possible. That's why we fear you. In 1,000 years, humanity might surpass us. So the Empire decided to eliminate you now while we still can. She reached into her robe slowly, carefully, as guards tensed. She pulled out a small data crystal. This contains the complete tactical plan for the invasion. Formation patterns, command protocols, shield frequencies, everything. It also contains something more important, the one fundamental weakness in military doctrine. Why would you give us this? Asked. Why betray your own people? Because in the last 6 months I learned something important, said, meeting his eyes. Your people taught me about choice. Follow orders, follow tradition, follow efficiency. But humans choose. You choose to be kind even when it's inefficient. You choose to hope even when logic says you should despair. You choose to fight even when you should surrender. I want to make a choice too. I choose humanity's survival over my empire's conquest. Grab the crystal. This could be a trap, false information designed to lead us into an ambush. It could be, agreed. You'll have to decide whether to trust me, just like I had to decide whether to trust that humanity deserves to survive. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Commander Minu's voice came over the speakers. All personnel to battle stations. The fleet is moving. They're entering Earth's solar system. The room emptied quickly as officers ran to their posts, stayed for a moment, looking at. She looked small and vulnerable in her restraints, nothing like the powerful princess he had married. If you're lying, he said quietly, if this is another trick, I will never forgive you. I know, she replied, but if I'm telling the truth and you survive this, maybe you'll understand that I really did fall in love with you, even though I wasn't supposed to, even though it ruins everything. Turned and left without another word. He couldn't process her confession now. There wasn't time. Earth had 72 hours to prepare for an invasion by a force far superior to anything humanity had ever faced. And their only hope was information from a woman who had already proven she could lie with perfect conviction. In the command center, Prime Minister gathered Earth's military leaders. Commander Minu pulled up tactical displays showing the fleet. Hundreds of ships, each one more powerful than Earth's entire navy combined. We can't win this fight, Minu said bluntly. Not with conventional tactics. Then we need unconventional tactics, replied. He looked at the data crystal in his hand. Analyze that information. If it's genuine, find us a way to survive. If it's fake, we need to know immediately. As officers scattered to their tasks, stood watching the approaching fleet on the display. Somewhere up there, Commander led an armada expecting an easy conquest. They had planned everything perfectly, mapped every defense, calculated every possibility. But they hadn't calculated one thing. They hadn't expected to choose humanity over her empire, and that one unexpected choice might be Earth's only chance for survival. The command center buzzed with frantic activity. Officers shouted orders, computers calculated trajectories, and holographic displays showed the fleet advancing steadily toward Earth. Humanity had 72 hours, but everyone knew that wasn't enough time to build new weapons or defenses. If they were going to survive, they needed to use what they already had in ways no one expected. Stood beside Commander Minu, watching analysts study the information had provided. His sister Sara was there too, her eyes scanning through technical specifications faster than anyone else could follow. "It's real," announced the head analyst after 3 hours of verification. "The tactical plans match fleet movements we've observed. The technical specifications align with everything we've learned about technology. Either this is genuine intelligence or the most sophisticated deception in military history." "What's their weakness?" Prime Minister demanded. Sora looked up from her console, her face pale but excited. "They think like machines. Their entire military doctrine is based on efficiency, predictability, and optimal responses. Their AI systems calculate the best possible action for every situation. They've wargamed every scenario thousands of times." So asked, "How does that help us?" "Because humans don't think like machines," said, suddenly understanding. "We're unpredictable, illogical. We do things that don't make sense mathematically but work anyway." Sora nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly, look at this." She pulled up a section of tactical doctrine. "They expect enemies to fight efficiently, to protect valuable assets, to retreat when losses exceed acceptable thresholds. But what if we don't do any of that? What if we do things that are technically stupid but work because they're so unexpected?" Minyu leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. "You're talking about chaos tactics, deliberately acting irrationally to confuse their prediction algorithms." "More than that," Sora continued. "I've been working on the FTL drive for 2 years, and I kept hitting walls because I was trying to be efficient. But yesterday, talking with some engineers, I realized I was thinking about it wrong. What if we make jumps that are too short to be useful? What if we jump randomly instead of strategically? Their systems won't be able to predict our movements because, mathematically, our movements will make no sense." "That's insane," one of the older admirals said. "Random FTL jumps could scatter our fleet. We could collide with our own ships. We could jump into their firing solutions." "Yes," Minyu said slowly, a dangerous smile forming. "We could. And because we could, they won't expect us to actually do it. Their computers will calculate the risks and assume we'll avoid such tactics." Looked around the room at his commanders and advisors. "Are we really considering fighting the most powerful military force in this region of space, using deliberately stupid tactics?" "Not stupid," corrected. "Creative," said it herself. "Can't innovate. They can't imagine truly new possibilities, so we show them something they've never imagined." "We have 60 hours left," said. "Someone convince me this crazy plan can work." For the next 2 days, Earth's military prepared for the strangest battle in human history. Sora worked around the clock installing experimental FTL drives in every human ship, even though the technology was untested and dangerous. The drives could make micro-jumps, short hops that served no strategic purpose but would make human ships impossible to track consistently. Minyu gathered ship captains and explained the battle plan, which wasn't really a plan at all. "You will not follow standard formations. You will not coordinate your attacks in predictable patterns. Every captain has complete freedom to act as they see fit, even if it seems suicidal or pointless. The goal is not to fight efficiently. The goal is to be completely unpredictable." "Sir," one captain asked, confused, "are you ordering us to ignore military doctrine?" "I'm ordering you to throw away everything you learned in military academy and fight like humans, not like computers," Minyu replied. "Be creative. Be reckless. Do things that make no tactical sense. Trust your instincts over your training." In the holding cell, sat alone, listening to the preparations through the facility's walls. She had been isolated since giving them the intelligence, with only guards who wouldn't speak to her. She wondered if hated her now. She wondered if Earth would survive. She wondered if she had made the right choice. The door opened. Entered, carrying a data pad. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and tension in every muscle. "We're using your information," he said without greeting. "We're going to try something that probably won't work, but it's better than doing nothing." "What will you do?" asked. "Fight like humans," he replied. "Chaotically, creatively, illogically, everything your people don't expect." His eyes widened. "You understand. You actually understand what I was trying to tell you." "Maybe," said. "Or maybe we're about to be destroyed while trying something stupid. Either way, you won't be here to see it. You're being transferred to a secure facility far from the battle zone." "No," said urgently. "Let me help. I can broadcast to the fleet, tell them what you're planning, cause confusion in their command structure." "Why would we trust you to do that?" asked bitterly. "You've lied to us for months. How do we know you won't betray us again?" "You don't," admitted. "But ask yourself, what do I gain from betraying you now? I've already committed treason. If the Empire wins, I'll be executed. My only chance for survival is if humanity wins." Before could respond, alarms blared again. The fleet had arrived at Earth's orbit 12 hours ahead of schedule. Time was up. Ran back to the command center, leaving alone again. On every screen, hundreds of silver ships surrounded Earth like a closing fist. They were beautiful and terrifying, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet. "All human forces launch," Minu ordered. Earth's fleet rose to meet them. Compared to they looked like children's toys. Small, crude, hopelessly outmatched. Commander's face appeared on the main communication screen. He was tall even for with skin that glowed with authority and eyes the color of deep space. "Humans of Earth," his voice boomed. "Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now and you will be allowed to serve the Empire. Fight, and you will be eliminated. This is Prime Minister of Earth. We refuse your terms. This is our home and we will defend it." Looked almost sad. "Then you choose destruction, such a waste. You had potential." He cut the communication and gave the order. "All ships begin the assault." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their shields glowing with power. Their weapons charged, targeting systems locked onto human ships with mathematical precision. And then humanity did something unexpected. The human ships scattered, not in retreat but in completely random directions. Some flew straight at the fleet, others dove downward toward Earth, some spun in circles, and then they started jumping. Short micro-jumps that covered only a few thousand kilometers before jumping again. They flickered in and out of normal space like fireflies, appearing in impossible locations. On the flagship stared at his tactical displays in confusion. What are they doing? This makes no sense. They're wasting fuel, breaking formation, exposing themselves to fire. "Our targeting systems cannot lock on, Commander," his weapons officer reported. "They jump before we can fire. When we predict their next location based on tactical logic, they appear somewhere else entirely." "Then fire everywhere," commanded. "Blanket the space around Earth with weapons fire. They cannot dodge if we target every location." But they had never fought an enemy that didn't care about efficiency. Human ships jumped into firing solutions deliberately, took damage, and kept fighting. They fired at targets that made no strategic sense. They coordinated attacks that looked random but somehow created gaps in formations. Sora's experimental weapons came online. Missiles that changed direction mid-flight for no apparent reason. Energy beams that split and recombined unpredictably. Mines that moved and hid and struck from unexpected angles. "Their ships are inferior," said, watching human vessels explode under fire. "We're destroying them easily, but there are too many targets. Our systems cannot process this many random variables." Then something happened that changed everything. A transmission broadcast on all frequencies. It was voice. His voice echoed across every communication channel in the battle space. Had authorized it at the last minute, a desperate gamble that might give them any advantage they could find. "Fleet, this is Princess. I speak to you not as royalty, but as someone who has lived among humans. What I am about to tell you will sound like treason, but it is truth. The Empire sent me here to map humanity's weaknesses. Instead, I discovered our own. On the flagship, Commander's face darkened with fury. Cut that transmission, find the source. But was broadcasting from Earth's most powerful transmitter, and her message continued. We pride ourselves on logic and efficiency, but logic is not wisdom. Efficiency is not strength. For 6 months I lived among humans, and I learned that our greatest weakness is that we cannot imagine what we have not calculated. We cannot create what we have not been programmed to build. We are prisoners of our own perfection. Several ships began to hesitate. Their captains, many of whom knew Princess personally, were shaken by her words. Look at this battle, continued. Humans are losing ships. They're taking casualties. By every logical measure, we should have won already. But they keep fighting with tactics that make no mathematical sense, and our systems cannot predict them. This is not weakness. This is the very creativity and innovation that our empire fears. And they are right to fear it, because in 1,000 years, humanity will surpass us if we do not destroy them now. She's trying to demoralize us, snarled to his officers. Ignore her words and continue the assault. But some ships were already breaking formation. Commander, one captain transmitted, if what the princess says is true, if we're only attacking humanity out of fear, then this is not a righteous conquest. This is genocide. You will follow orders, commanded. In Earth's command center, Minu saw the fractures forming in the fleet. Now, he ordered, all ships focus fire on the flagship, maximum chaos protocols. Every human ship still capable of fighting turned towards massive vessel. They didn't approach strategically. They came from every angle simultaneously, jumping randomly, firing weapons in patterns that seemed insane, but somehow created a storm of fire that the flagship's defenses couldn't fully counter. Watched the battle unfold, his heart pounding. Dozens of human ships died in suicide runs against the flagship, but each one that fell created an opening, a momentary gap in the shields, a distraction that let another ship strike from an impossible angle. Their shields are failing, an analyst called out. The flagship's main reactor is showing instability. On the flagship, chaos erupted. Systems failed. Fire spread through corridors. The perfect, efficient ship designed by the greatest engineers was being torn apart by crude human weapons used in completely illogical ways. All ships protect the flagship, ordered, but half his fleet was now hesitating, paralyzed by doubt. Were they heroes or monsters? Were they protecting the Empire or destroying the future? Commander Minu pressed the final advantage. Sora, is your special project ready? Sora's hands flew across her controls. Charging now. This is completely untested. It might destroy us instead of them. Do it anyway, Minu ordered. Show them human innovation. Sora had spent the last 60 hours building something that every scientist told her was impossible. She had combined human FTL technology with energy principles in a way that violated a dozen laws of physics. In theory, it would create a localized field that disrupted shield harmonics. In practice, it might explode and take out half of Earth's orbital space. Firing, Sora said, and pressed the button. A wave of energy pulsed from Earth's orbital platform. It spread across the battle space in ripples of impossible colors. When it touched shields, they flickered and failed. For 30 seconds, every ship in the region was completely defenseless. All ships fire everything, Minu roared. The human fleet, battered and desperate, unleashed every weapon they had. The flagship, already damaged, took the full force of the barrage. Explosions tore through its hull. Its reactor went critical. Abandon ship, someone screamed on the command channel. But Commander refused. He stayed at his post, watching his perfect plan fall apart because he couldn't understand the chaos he was facing. The flagship exploded in a ball of light that briefly Earth's sun. The remaining ships stopped fighting. Some retreated immediately. Others hung in space, their captains uncertain what to do now that their commander was gone and their princess had declared the war unjust. Human fleet cease fire, ordered. Ships, we offer you a choice. Leave in peace or stay and talk about a different kind of future, one built on mutual respect rather than conquest. For a long moment, silence filled the communication channels. Then, one by one, captains began to respond. About half the fleet jumped away, returning to the Empire, but the other half stayed, requesting permission to discuss terms of genuine alliance. The battle was over. Earth had won, though the cost was terrible. More than 40% of humanity's fleet was destroyed. Thousands of people had died. Cities on Earth had been hit by weapons fire that broke through the orbital battle, but humanity had survived. In the command center, exhausted officers embraced and cried and celebrated. Stood quietly, thinking about all the lives lost, both human and. "We need to talk to," said, approaching him. "Her broadcast may have saved us. Without it, the fleet might have stayed unified." Nodded and went to the holding cells. Sat where he had left her, but now she looked different, smaller somehow, more vulnerable. She looked up when he entered, and he could see hope and fear warring in her golden eyes. "Did we win?" she asked quietly. "We survived," corrected, "thanks partly to you." Stood slowly. "What happens to me now? Will you execute me as a war criminal?" "That's being debated," admitted. "Many people want you punished for what you did, but others point out that you gave us the information that helped us survive. Your broadcast turned some of the fleet against their own commander." "I don't expect forgiveness," said. "I just wanted to do one thing right before the end." Stepped closer to her. "Why did you really do it? Was it just survival instinct?" "No," said softly. "It was you, all of you. In my training I was taught that humans were primitive, violent, chaotic. But living here I learned that chaos is just another word for freedom. That violence sometimes means courage. That being primitive means being close to what really matters. I learned that efficiency isn't the highest virtue. Sometimes love is illogical and hope is inefficient and kindness is mathematically wasteful, but they matter more than calculations." "You love Earth that much?" asked. "I love what it taught me," replied. "And yes, I love the human I married, even though it was supposed to be a lie, even though it complicated everything." Didn't know how to respond to that. He left her in the cell and went to the trial that would decide her fate. For 3 days, lawyers and politicians argued. Some called for execution. Some called for life imprisonment. Some argued she should be freed as a hero. In the end, a compromise was reached. Would be released under supervision to help rebuild trust between humans and the who wanted peace. She would work as a translator, mediator, and cultural advisor. She would spend the rest of her life trying to repair what her espionage had broken. 6 months later, and stood together on the first joint human colony. It was a new world, a fresh start for both civilizations. Around them, human and engineers worked side by side, building something neither species could have built alone. "Do you think we'll make it work?" asked, "humans and living together?" "I don't know," admitted. "But humans are good at making things work that shouldn't. It's our special talent." Smiled, a real smile this time. "I'm glad I failed my mission. The future we're building now is better than the Empire's conquest." In the colony's central plaza, human and children played together. They were inventing games that mixed rules from both cultures, creating something entirely new. One little human girl taught a boy a song. A child showed human kids how to make flowers from light. Watching them, realized something important. The war hadn't been won with weapons or tactics. It had been won the moment chose love over duty, creativity over efficiency, hope over logic. That choice had cracked open a door to a future no one had calculated or predicted. "I never thanked you," said quietly, "for choosing us." "I chose myself too," replied. "I chose to be free instead of perfect, to feel instead of calculate, to hope instead of plan. That's what humanity taught me. That's the real gift you gave the galaxy." Above them, ships from a dozen worlds came and went. The empire had fractured, with many systems seeking to learn from Earth's example. Human creativity combined with technology was creating innovations neither species had imagined possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and it all started because an alien bride had a secret agenda that failed in the most beautiful way possible. She came to conquer Earth and ended up being conquered by something more powerful than any weapon. The simple, chaotic, illogical possibility that different beings could choose to love each other. Prime Minister gave a speech that day at the colony's opening ceremony. They told us we were primitive. They told us we were weak. They told us we had no chance. But they didn't understand that humanity's strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to imagine a better future and then make it real, even when every calculation says it's impossible. The crowd cheered, both human and voices mixing together. And somewhere in that noise, in that chaos, was the sound of a new civilization being born. One built not on conquest or submission, but on the radical idea that different beings could choose to build something together. Took's hand, she squeezed back. They had a long road ahead, rebuilding trust, healing wounds, proving that peace was possible. But for the first time since they met, they were walking that road together by choice, not duty. And that made all the difference.